The red dust of Mars swirled around the newest human colony dome as workers finished installing the final solar panels. Inside the command center, Admiral James Stone watched the construction through the reinforced windows. Humanity had come far in the last 50 years. Mars now hosted 3 major cities, and the Europa base was producing more clean energy than all of Earth's old power plants combined. "Admiral, we're picking up something strange," called out one of the operators. "Multiple objects just appeared at the edge of our solar system." Stone walked over to the main display. The objects were massive, each one larger than the biggest ships humans had ever built. They moved with impossible grace, following patterns that seemed to ignore normal physics. "Get me Earth Command," Stone ordered, his voice steady despite the tension building in his chest. Before the communication officer could respond, every screen in the command center flickered. A figure appeared, tall, with silvery skin and multiple eyes arranged in a circle around its head. The universal translators kicked in as it began to speak. "Primitive species of Sol system," the alien said. "I am High Commander Reed of the Galactic Empire. Your expansion has been noted. Your system now falls under Imperial protection and control. Prepare for integration." Stone's first thought was that this had to be a joke. But the energy readings were real. The ships were real. This was humanity's first contact with alien life, and they came as conquerors. "This is Admiral Stone of the United Earth Federation. We welcome peaceful contact, but we don't accept demands for surrender." The alien's eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture that might have been amusement or contempt. "Your acceptance is not required. We have united 10,000 species under Imperial rule. Your technology is barely past planetary exploration. Integration will proceed." In the background, Stone's staff was busy. Silent alarms raced across the solar system. On Earth, military bases went to full alert. Hidden facilities deep under the moon's surface powered up systems that hadn't been tested outside simulations. "How many species have resisted integration?" Stone asked, buying time. "None have successfully resisted," Reed replied. "Most see the benefits of Imperial rule quickly. Some require demonstrations of power. Your species has potential. We've observed your rapid advancement. Submit now, and you may earn positions of responsibility within the Empire." Stone thought about human history, about how every major advancement came from conflict, about the weapons humanity had developed and hidden away, praying they'd never be needed. "High Commander," Stone said carefully, "I strongly suggest you check your historical records. Look for any species that evolved like humans, through constant conflict and competition. Ask your scientists what that means. Are you trying to frighten the Empire?" Reed's translator conveyed something between amusement and pity. "Our smallest scout ship could destroy your largest cities." "That's not a threat," Stone replied. "It's a warning, from one sentient being to another. We don't want war. We've seen too much of it. That's why we're asking you to reconsider." Behind him, the operator's screen showed antimatter containment facilities coming online throughout the solar system. Defense platforms hidden in asteroid belts began warming up weapons that bent space itself. AI systems that had been confined to simulations were being transferred to real-world combat units. "You have 1 Earth day to begin integration procedures," Reed announced. "After that, we will provide a demonstration of Imperial power. Remember, we have united thousands of species. We have overcome every form of resistance." "Yes," Stone said quietly, "but you've never faced humans before." The transmission cut off. Stone looked at his staff, saw the same grim determination on every face. Humanity had spent centuries fighting itself, developing weapons that could crack planets, building defenses that could stop them. They had hoped first contact would be peaceful. They had prepared for it not to be. "Send word to Earth Command," Stone ordered. "Tell them." He paused, looking at the massive Imperial ships on the display. "Tell them the Empire didn't listen. And may whatever god they believe in have mercy on their souls." The message raced toward Earth at quantum speeds, bypassing normal space. Humanity had warned them to run. Now they would show them why. The United Nations building in New York had never been so quiet. Leaders from every nation sat in the emergency council chamber, watching as General Marcus Wright walked to the podium. At 70 years old, the retired general moved with the same strength that had made him famous during the resource wars 20 years ago. "Ladies and gentlemen," Wright began, his voice filling the silent room. "An hour ago, we received Admiral Stone's message from Mars. The Galactic Empire has given us 23 hours to surrender." He paused, looking at the worried faces before him. "They believe we are weak. They are wrong." On the main screen behind him, images appeared showing the Empire's massive ships. Next to them were detailed scans revealing their weapon systems, shield technologies, and power sources. "Their technology is advanced," Wright continued, "but predictable. They've never had to fight a real war. Their weapons are designed to intimidate, not to win battles. They don't understand what humanity has become." The room stayed silent as Wright pressed a button. The display changed, showing massive structures hidden throughout the solar system. Weapons platforms disguised as asteroids. Entire fleets of automated warships kept powered down in underground bases on Mercury's dark side. "After the last war, we agreed to hide our most dangerous weapons. We buried them in moons, asteroids, and gas giants. We hoped we'd never need them." Wright's face hardened. "That time is over." One of the European representatives stood up. "Are you suggesting we could actually fight the Empire? They have thousands of worlds." "They have thousands of worlds that have never seen real combat," Wright replied. "Their member species evolved through cooperation. They built their weapons as tools of peace." He smiled grimly. "We built ours to end wars." The display changed again, showing Earth's hidden defenses. Quantum shield generators that could protect entire continents. Nanite swarms that could take apart enemy ships at the atomic level. AI battle systems that could process combat decisions faster than light could travel. "What they see is a primitive species that just reached Mars," Wright said. "What we are is a species that spent 10,000 years learning to fight. Every major advancement we ever made came from trying to win wars. Our medicines, battlefield surgery, our AI, combat computers, our space travel, started as missile technology." A murmur went through the room as understanding dawned on the assembled leaders. "I've drafted a final warning message to the Empire," Wright continued. "Not a surrender, a warning. Because unlike them, we know what real war costs. We know what it means to fight for survival." He pressed another button. The screen showed a simple message. "To the Galactic Empire. We have reviewed your demand for surrender. We understand you believe this integration will be simple. You are mistaken. This is not arrogance. This is not bravado. This is a warning from a species that has spent its entire history preparing for war, hoping to avoid it. For your own sake, reconsider. Humanity." The Chinese president stood up. "They won't listen. They're too sure of their power." "No," Wright agreed. "They won't listen. That's why I've already ordered the activation of Defense Protocol Zero." The room erupted in shocked whispers. Protocol Zero was the final defense plan, developed after the last war. It would wake up every hidden weapon, every dormant AI, every destructive tool humanity had ever created. In 22 hours, Wright said over the noise, "They will try to demonstrate their power. They will fail. And then they will learn why every human child learns about war before they learn about peace. Why we build bunkers under our schools. Why we never stopped preparing for the worst." He looked at each leader in turn. "We tried to warn them. We tried to avoid this. But they've never met a species born in war, forged in conflict, and tempered by the constant fear of extinction. They've never met humans before." The room was silent again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was determination. Humanity had spent its entire history fighting itself, developing weapons that could destroy worlds, then building defenses against those same weapons. They had hoped first contact would bring peace. The Empire's ships hung in space, their crews confident in their power, unaware that humanity was waking up weapons that could tear reality itself apart. They had been warned to run. They were about to learn why. The Imperial fleet appeared near Mars exactly when they said they would. 200 warships, their golden hulls shining in the sunlight, formed a perfect attack pattern. To the Empire, this was a simple show of force. To the humans watching from their bases and ships, it looked like children playing at war. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies," reported the communications officer on the Mars Defense Station. "They want everyone to see this." Admiral Stone stood at the command center's main window, watching the Imperial ships take position. Behind him, holographic displays showed Earth's defense systems coming fully online. Green lights appeared across the board as hidden weapons platforms revealed themselves. "Let them broadcast," Stone said quietly. "The whole galaxy should see what happens when you ignore a warning." High Commander Reed's voice boomed across all channels. "People of Earth, your time has expired. We will now demonstrate the consequence of defying the Empire. Watch as we—" The transmission cut off as the first human defense platforms activated their quantum shields. Beautiful blue barriers of energy appeared around Mars, Earth, and every human settlement in the solar system. The Imperial ships fired their weapons, bright beams of energy that the Empire had used to subjugate 1,000 worlds. The beams hit the quantum shields and vanished, not reflected, not absorbed, but completely erased from existence. The Empire fired again, and again. Each shot disappeared into nothing. "Signal from Earth Command," the communications officer announced. "Defense Protocol 0 is fully active. We have permission to demonstrate." Stone nodded. "Send the targeting data to all platforms. Show them what real weapons look like." Across the solar system, weapon systems that humanity had hoped never to use came to life. Automated defense platforms hidden in asteroids revealed themselves. Missile silos on Mars opened. Battle AIs that had fought 1,000,000 simulated wars took control of human weapon systems. "Targets locked," reported the weapons officer. "Firing solutions ready." Stone pressed a button on his command console. His voice carried across space to every Imperial ship. "This is Admiral Stone. You were warned. This is your final chance to retreat." The Imperial fleet responded by launching fighters. Thousands of small ships that had never faced a real enemy. They moved in perfect formation, beautiful but predictable. "They still think this is a demonstration," Stone said sadly. "Show them what war really means. All platforms, open fire." What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries. Human weapons, real weapons, built by a species that had spent millennia trying to kill itself. Activated. Antimatter torpedoes phased through Imperial shields as if they weren't there. Quantum disruptors turned proud Imperial warships into clouds of atoms. Eye-guided drones swarmed through fighter formations, destroying them with brutal efficiency. In the first 30 seconds, 20 Imperial ships vanished. In the next 30 seconds, 30 more died. After 2 minutes, half the Imperial fleet was gone. The remaining Imperial ships broke formation for the first time, their perfect patterns shattering as they faced real combat. Emergency retreat signals filled the communications channels. Ships tried to jump to faster-than-light speed, but human quantum inhibitors held them in place. "My God," someone whispered on the command deck. "They really don't know how to fight." Stone watched as more Imperial ships died. Their weapons were toys, designed to look impressive. Their shields were meant to stop energy weapons, not the reality-bending horrors humanity had created. Their crews had never faced an enemy that fought back. After 10 minutes, only 10 Imperial ships remained. Stone raised his hand, and the human weapons fell silent. This was a demonstration. He broadcast to the surviving ships. "A small fraction of our real capability. Return to your empire. Show them what happened here." Tell them what humanity can do. Tell them that we warned you to run. The quantum inhibitors deactivated. The surviving Imperial ships fled, jumping away so fast they left trails of light in space. They carried with them footage of the battle, footage that would soon spread across the Empire. On the Mars Defense Station, Stone looked at the debris field that had been the Imperial fleet. "Send word to Earth Command," he ordered. "Tell them to prepare for what comes next. The Empire won't take this humiliation lightly." He was right. The Empire was already calling an emergency session. For the first time in its history, it faced a species that didn't just resist. It dominated. The real war was about to begin, and humanity was ready. The Imperial Palace on Capital World shook with anger. 2,000 ships gathered above the planet, the Empire's main battle fleet. They had never all gathered in one place before. They had never needed to. "Those demons," shouted the Imperial commander, his multiple eyes flashing with rage. "They destroyed our ships like they were nothing." The Imperial War Council watched the footage from the Mars battle for the 100th time. The perfect Imperial formation dissolving into chaos. The strange human weapons that ignored their best shields. The terrifying efficiency of the AI-controlled drones. "We've analyzed their weapons," reported the chief scientist, her silver skin pale with worry. "They're not just advanced. They're wrong. They'd break the laws of physics. Who designs weapons that tear apart reality itself?" "A species that spent its whole history at war," answered another council member. "Our spies finally found their historical records. These humans, they've had thousands of wars. Against themselves." The room fell silent. The concept was alien to them. Every species in the Empire had evolved through cooperation. War was just a show of power, a way to maintain order. Back on Earth, Admiral Stone and General Wright stood in the deep underground command center. Around them, screens showed the massive Imperial fleet gathering. 2,000 ships, Wright said, studying the data. "They're bringing everything they have." Stone nodded. "They still don't understand. They think numbers will save them." He turned to the command staff. "Activate the deep space platforms. Wake up the AIs we kept in cold storage. It's time to show them what humanity can really do." Across the solar system, hidden installations powered up. Ships that had been sleeping in the void between planets came to life. But the real surprise was happening in labs across Earth. "Sir," a young officer reported, "Project Mirror is ready." Wright smiled grimly. "They copy our ships, didn't they? Show them what happens when humans decide to copy something." In orbit around Jupiter, massive fabrication facilities began producing ships. Not the careful, beautiful vessels the Empire built, but brutal, efficient machines of war. Each one carried weapons reverse-engineered from the Imperial technology, then improved by human military science. The Imperial fleet arrived 3 days later. 2,000 golden ships filled Earth's sky, their weapons charged. High Commander Reed's voice boomed across all channels. "Humans, you have committed an act of war against the Empire. Surrender now, or we will destroy every settlement in your system." Stone's response was simple. He pressed a button. From behind every moon, from the dark side of planets, from the depths of space, humanity's real fleet appeared. 5,000 ships. Not beautiful, not perfect, just deadly. By all the stars, someone on an Imperial ship whispered, "How long have they been building these?" "Since we first looked at the stars," Stone replied, letting all ships hear him. "Since we first understood we weren't alone. We knew someone would come. We prepared. We built. We waited." The human ships moved with terrifying precision, their AI cores calculating perfect attack patterns. Behind them, more ships emerged from the fabrication facilities, copies of Imperial technology rebuilt with human warfare doctrines. "Impossible," Reed shouted. "No species can advance this fast." "No peaceful species," Wright corrected him. "But we're not peaceful. We're human." The battle that followed changed galactic history forever. Imperial ships fired their beautiful energy weapons. Human ships responded with weapons that bent space, that turned physics into a suggestion, that brought impossible nightmares into reality. The Empire's perfect formation shattered. Their ships, designed for show, fell before vessels built for one purpose: to win at any cost. The AIs controlling the human fleet fought with strategies learned from every war in human history, adapted to space combat. Within an hour, half the Imperial fleet was gone. Their remaining ships tried to retreat, but human quantum technology held them in place. The Empire's greatest fleet was being torn apart by a species they had dismissed as primitive. And in the Imperial Palace, watching through long-range sensors, the Council began to understand. They hadn't found a new primitive species to add to their collection. They had awakened humanity, and humanity had spent its entire existence preparing for this moment. The real war was just beginning, and for the first time in its history, the Empire knew fear. The Imperial Palace burned, not from human weapons, but from riots. Thousands of alien species that had lived under Imperial rule for centuries were rising up. The truth about humanity had spread across the galaxy, and with it came a terrible revelation. The Empire wasn't powerful. It had just never faced a real enemy before. Another system has declared independence, reported an aide, his tentacles shaking as he handed reports to the Imperial Council. The Seventh Fleet has surrendered without fighting. The humans, they're not even attacking them. They're teaching them to defend themselves. In the command ship above Earth, Admiral Stone watched the Empire crumble through real-time quantum communications. General Wright stood beside him, both men silent as they witnessed the end of the greatest power the galaxy had ever known. "Incoming transmission," called out the communications officer. "It's from the Imperial Science Academy. Priority 1. The main screen lit up, showing an alien scientist. Her silver skin had turned almost white with fear. "We've completed our analysis of human history," she said without greeting. We don't understand. How are you still alive?" "What do you mean?" Stone asked. "Your wars. The weapons you created. The poisons, the plagues, the nuclear fires." The scientist's multiple eyes blinked rapidly. "Any one of them should have wiped you out. But you survived. You kept fighting. You got stronger." Wright stepped forward. "That's exactly why we survived. Because we never stopped fighting. Never stopped preparing for the next war." The scientist's image was replaced by scenes from human history. Ancient battles with swords and spears. World wars with tanks and planes. Modern conflicts with drones and cyber weapons. Every other species in the galaxy evolved through cooperation. The scientist continued, her voice trembling. "When we faced problems, we worked together. When you faced problems, you fought. You turned everything into a weapon. Even peace became a weapon to you." Stone nodded slowly. "Mutually assured destruction. The peace that comes from knowing war would destroy everything." On screens around them, more reports flowed in. Imperial worlds were declaring independence by the hour. Some asked for human protection. Others begged for human teachers to help them understand warfare. "The Empire's Third Fleet just arrived at Alpha Centauri," reported a tactical officer. "Show them," Wright ordered. The human defenders at Alpha Centauri didn't fire their weapons. Instead, they transmitted data, detailed scans of the Imperial ships, pointing out every weakness. Technical readouts showing how easily human weapons could tear them apart. Battle simulations demonstrating their complete vulnerability. The Third Fleet retreated without firing a shot. "They're learning," Stone said quietly. "Finally learning why we warned them to run." A new message flashed on the main screen. The Imperial Council was requesting an emergency meeting, not to negotiate surrender, but to understand. The council chamber was no longer the proud room it had been. Bird marks scarred the walls. Empty seats showed where council members had fled. "Why?" asked the head counselor, his voice heavy with defeat. "Why did you give us so many chances to retreat? You could have destroyed us from the beginning." Because we know war, Wright answered. Real war. We know its cost. Every human child learns about the millions who died in our wars. Every human city has monuments to the dead. We didn't want another war. Stone stepped forward. Your empire ruled through fear of power. But you never understood real power. Real power is knowing you can destroy something, choosing not to, and being ready if you must. The council chamber fell silent. On screens behind them, more Imperial fleets were standing down. More worlds were breaking away. The empire that had ruled for 10,000 years was dissolving. What happens now? Asked the council member. Now you learn, Wright said. You learn why humans build bunkers under schools, why we hide weapons in asteroids, why we prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. And if we refuse to learn? Stone's face hardened. Then you see what happens when humans stop holding back. When we stop trying to avoid war and start fighting to win. The Empire had ruled the galaxy through fear of its power, but now the galaxy knew real fear. The kind that humans had lived with their entire history. The fear that drove them to build stronger weapons, better defenses, more terrible ways to fight. The Empire was breaking. And in its place, something new was rising. A galaxy that finally understood why humans had warned them to run. Deep in the Imperial Palace, the last loyal members of the Empire made their final desperate plan. The head scientist stood before the remaining council members, her hands shaking, as she held an ancient data crystal. We found it in the Forbidden Archives, she said. Weapons that even the Empire feared to use. Planet killers, star enders, reality breakers. The head counselor leaned forward. Can they stop the humans? Nothing can stop them now, a voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned to see Admiral Stone and General Wright walking into the chamber, flanked by human Marines in powered armor. The council members jumped to their feet. How did you get in here? We've been here for hours, Wright answered calmly. Your security systems were good, but they were designed to look intimidating, like everything else in your empire. Stone pointed at the data crystal. You're thinking about using the forbidden weapons. Don't. Let us show you why. He pressed a button on his wrist computer. A hologram appeared in the center of the room, showing a distant star system with a single dead planet. Watch, Stone said quietly. A human ship appeared in the system. Just one ship, small and ugly compared to Imperial vessels. It fired a single missile toward the dead planet. What happened next made the council members stumble back in horror. The planet didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist. No debris, no explosion, just empty space where a world had been. That, Wright said into the silence, was our smallest planet cracker. A test device. Would you like to see what our real weapons do? Impossible, whispered the head scientist. The energy required, the technology. We developed it centuries ago, Stone replied, then locked it away. Because humans learned something your empire never did. The more powerful the weapon, the more important it is to never use it. Another hologram appeared, showing the human fleet now surrounding the Imperial capital. Not the beautiful ships of the Empire, but dark, efficient machines of war. Your forbidden weapons, Wright gestured at the data crystal. We developed worse ones. Then we developed defenses against them. Then we developed weapons that made those defenses useless. Then we locked them all away and prayed we'd never need them. The head counselor sank back into his chair. Why are you showing us this? Because you still don't understand, Stone answered. You think this was a war. It wasn't. This was us being gentle, being careful, trying to avoid what humans do when we really fight. On screens around the chamber, reports kept coming in. More Imperial worlds declaring independence, more fleets surrendering. The Empire was dissolving not through force, but through the realization of how powerless they had always been. If you use those forbidden weapons, Wright said, pointing at the data crystal, you'll force us to respond, to show you what real forbidden weapons can do. And none of us wants that. The head scientist looked at the empty space where the test planet had been. "What do you want from us?" "The same thing we wanted from the beginning," Stone replied. "Stand down. Learn. Understand why we warned you to run." Wright stepped forward, his voice gentler now. "Your empire ruled through fear of power. But you never understood real power comes from knowing when not to use it, from building weapons so terrible that using them becomes unthinkable." "Mutually assured destruction," the head scientist whispered, finally understanding. "Like in your human history, the peace that comes from knowing war would end everything." Stone nodded. "Now you're learning. The question is, do we need to demonstrate more, or are you ready to listen?" The head counselor looked at his fellow council members, at the data crystal that had seemed like salvation moments ago, at the empty space where a planet had been. Slowly, he stood up. Then, with deliberate care, he took the data crystal and crushed it in his hands. "We surrender," he said quietly. "Completely. Unconditionally. And we're ready to learn." Stone and Wright exchanged looks. This was what they had hoped for, not victory through destruction, but through understanding. The Empire had finally learned why humans had warned them to run. Because sometimes the most dangerous species isn't the one that wants to fight. It's the one that knows exactly how terrible fighting can be. 5 years after the Empire's surrender, the galaxy looked very different. The great Imperial Palace, once a symbol of absolute power, had been transformed into the Galactic Council headquarters. Representatives from thousands of species sat in chambers where Imperial lords once ruled, learning lessons that humanity had paid for in blood. Admiral Stone stood at the main podium, addressing the latest group of alien military students. Behind him, screens showed images of Earth's ancient battlefields, nuclear wastelands that had become gardens, and monuments to wars that had shaped human history. "The greatest victory," Stone explained to his alien audience, "is the one you win without fighting. That's why we tried to warn the Empire, why we asked them to run." In the back of the chamber, General Wright watched with a mix of pride and sadness. The aliens were learning, but some lessons came harder than others. "Another border dispute has been resolved," an aide reported to Wright. "The former Imperial worlds of Sector 7 accepted human peacekeepers. No shots fired." Wright nodded. This was the new way. Human ships patrolling space, not as conquerors, but as guardians. The only species with real combat experience now protected those who had never known war. "Ambassador," a young alien diplomat approached Wright, his scales shimmering with curiosity. "We found more of your human history records, your world wars. How did you survive such things?" "We survived," Wright answered quietly, "because we made sure we would never forget them. Every human child learns about the millions who died. Every human city has shelters built beneath it. We remember the cost." In orbit above the capital, human warships floated alongside newly built alien vessels. The alien ships were still beautiful, but now they carried real weapons, real defenses. Under human guidance, they were learning to balance beauty with function. "The Galactic Defense Force training is complete," reported a human officer in the Space Control Center. "The alien crews achieved 80% efficiency in combat simulations." Stone, finished with his lecture, joined Wright in the observation room overlooking the city. The alien capital had changed too. Less focus on looking impressive, more on being strong. "They're learning," Stone said, watching ships land and take off. "Slowly, but they're learning." "Learning what?" asked the alien diplomat who had stayed to listen. "The real meaning of strength," Wright answered. "Not just having powerful weapons, but knowing when not to use them. Understanding that the best defense isn't a bigger gun, but making sure no one wants to fight in the first place." Across the galaxy, the changes were spreading. Former Imperial worlds built their first bunkers, not out of fear but understanding. Alien children studied human history, learning about wars so they would know why to avoid them. In deep space, at the edge of known territory, human and alien ships patrolled together. The aliens had better sensors, more efficient engines. The humans had combat experience and tactical knowledge. Together, they were stronger than either had been alone. We received the report from Earth. The aide returned with a datapad. The last Imperial weapons cache has been secured. The galaxy is officially demilitarized, except for defensive forces. Stone smiled. And now they understand why we keep the weapons but pray we never use them. There's something else, Wright added, turning to the alien diplomat. Something your people need to understand. Humans aren't special because we're stronger or smarter. We're different because we learned our lessons the hard way. The diplomat nodded slowly. Through war. Through surviving war, Stone corrected. Through building weapons that could crack planets, then choosing not to use them. Through understanding that real peace isn't the absence of weapons, but the wisdom to keep them sheathed. Outside, the sun was setting on the capital city. Ships from 1,000 worlds moved through the sky, their crews no longer divided into empire and subjects, but united in understanding what humanity had tried to teach them. They had learned why humans warned them to run. They had learned why humans built such terrible weapons. Most importantly, they had learned why humans worked so hard to avoid using them. The galaxy was at peace, not the false peace of imperial rule, but the true peace that comes from understanding war's cost. And in orbit above every world, human ships stood guard, carrying weapons they hoped never to use, crewed by warriors who prayed for peace. Because that, in the end, was humanity's greatest lesson. Sometimes the best way to prevent a war is to be very, very good at winning one.